Hi, and welcome to our Vclass tutorial. Today we're going to learn how to get into and use Vclass, which is EBUS's online or virtual classroom. My name is Geneva Stanbridge, and I'm one of the elementary teachers here at EBUS. Some of the things we're going to learn about today are where to find Vclasses, how to log into them, and how to use the tools when you're in an online class, such as audio, video, participants window, chat window, and the whiteboard tools. Now, knowing where to find Vclasses is really important because you need to know where to go to get into a class in the first place. So the easiest way to do this is to log into your child's classroom. Their EBUS dashboard, you might hear it referred to as Moodle. Go ahead and log into your child's Moodle dashboard, EBUS dashboard, and click through from that intermediate screen that you get. Click on any of those again, and then you'll get to the main dashboard, which is sort of this green logo list of classes and courses that your student is part of. Click on Vclass Valley, and you'll come to a page that it looks something like this. You'll note that there's a calendar on the side. If you look on the calendar, there'll be little sort of peach-colored blocks that are highlighted there. Those are all classes that are scheduled for various things. So you can always click on those links directly, or what I usually recommend doing is clicking on this tab here, Upcoming and Current Vclasses. When you click on that, you'll come to the section where we list icons and images and links for classes that are coming up or that are currently running as a series. So if you click on the Land of Stories icon, you'll come to the page for the Land of Stories. This is where all the information kind of gets put for this class. So you'll see that there's dates listed, who the host teacher is, and a link to enter the Vclass. So this is where you go to actually get into the Vclass on the day it runs. Now, how to log in is actually pretty easy, but there's a few little things you might need to know to get in successfully. So when you click on the Vclass Enter or the Enter Vclass link, you'll be taken to a screen. You may be taken to a screen that looks like this, in which case you just click on the Start Session button that shows up sort of halfway down the page, or you might actually be taken directly to this login box where you type in your name as you want it to appear in the session. Now, the important thing about this is that you can type in any name, but what we ask is that students actually type in their first real name. So whatever they like to go by, whether it's Emily or Taryn or Dylan or anything like that, they should include their real first name, however they want to be addressed in class. But if students also want to include their last name, they can, or even just their last name first initial. Sometimes that's a good idea if you have a name that's maybe a bit more common, because if we have several Dylans in class, it's nice to know which one you're referring to. And then the other thing that students sometimes like to do is include a nickname. That's okay as long as they first include their real name, their real first name, and then the nickname is also appropriate for the class. So sometimes kids will give themselves nicknames based on things that they're interested in or fandoms. As an example, I've typed in here Jane Doe, which is my real name, and then in brackets I've put Dragon Trainer. Now, when you click the button to log in, which is this one here, you'll be loading the Vclass onto your computer. It's just a web link. It doesn't really ask you to install a lot of things, but you might need to accept, as in this screen, you might need to click Run. It might ask you to say OK. That's okay. This is a very safe program, so please do accept or click OK or Run or all those things to allow the program to run on your device or your computer. Now, when you finally get into the online class or online classroom, this is what you will see. There are lots of different parts to our main room. I just want to go through and tell you about a few of them. So we have an audio video panel here. This is where the microphone and the speakers are controlled by, and where if you use webcam, that is controlled here as well. There's also a participants window, which lists all the people in the class. There's a chat window, and then this is the big area where the lesson shows. This is called the whiteboard. So let's have a look at the different areas and go through them just a little bit in more detail. So the audio window is one of the ones that you'll probably find your kid using a lot, especially if they like to talk on the microphone and be heard within the class. So when you are given the opportunity to speak on the microphone, all you have to do is click on this talk button. Now, right now, it's showing as grayed out. That's because the microphone is turned off. The teacher might be speaking, or they just don't have the microphones on for students. But when the microphone is enabled, it will turn the talk button or the talk word black. So when that's black, that is available to be clicked on and used. So when you want to speak, you just click on the talk button, say your piece, and then really important, when you're done speaking, you need to click the talk button off again. So you click talk, you speak, and then you click it off again. That way the next person can use the microphone. If the teacher has enabled a webcam, then this video link here, that would show as black as well. Just note that often teachers aren't using webcams throughout the class. They do sort of eat up a lot of bandwidth and make things really slow if people aren't on the best internet. So we don't tend to use webcams throughout our sessions. Sometimes we might use them as part of our session. Oftentimes I will, when I run a Vclass, I allow some time at the end of class to put webcams on, but we don't generally use the webcams a lot during class. Now, the next little section that I would like to highlight is the participants window. So this is sort of our class roster. This is where everyone who's in the session shows up. And there's a lot of little tools that you can use within this participants window that the teacher might use to encourage feedback and participation. And there's also some things in here that you can use to let the teacher know if you're in class, participate in polls, all those kinds of things. So one of the first things that you can do is if you click or just run your mouse over this smiley face icon, you get a list of emojis that you can use and give feedback. So sometimes the teacher will say, okay, can everyone hear me? If you can hear me, give me a smiley face. So you'll ask students, they'll want to be clicking on the smiley face. And so you'll see you click on it and it shows here beside the student's name for a few seconds and then it disappears. So it's just kind of there as a little quick feedback tool to get some things back. So you can see there's a smiley face, there's a lull, there's applause. We like to give applause when kids are doing something. And then thumbs up, thumbs down, confusion if you're having issues, things like that. So there's those little icons that you can use. This next one here is just a button that lets us know if you're away, but without leaving the session entirely. So if you have to step away from your computer for a minute, you need to go to the bathroom or go grab a bite to eat or a drink, you just click on this and it shows the student as away. This is a good thing to do if you are not going to be sitting right at your computer, because then the teacher knows that you're not right there. When you're back, you just click it again, and then you're still showing as in class. The next one that we use a lot in our classes is raise hand. So when the teacher might ask students to raise their hands, if they're going to be commenting on a question or taking a turn at something on the screen, we'll ask them to raise their hands. And so then they click on this little hand and a little hand shows beside their name and a little number shows. So if there were more students in this class, you would actually see them in order of when they click their hand. So you'll get a 1, 2, 3, 4 order of little numbers beside their names. Please note that when a student clicks on this hand to raise their hand, it actually dings for the teacher, for the moderator who's running the class. So please don't do this, click on it again and again and again where it flashes, because every time it gets clicked on, it's a ding for the teacher, which can be kind of distracting if they're trying to manage the whole class. So thank you for making note of that. And then to lower your hand, you just click it again. And the last thing I want to show you on here is the polling button. Now the teachers might have the kids do a poll. Could be one here where it's yes and no. Click the green check mark for yes, click the red X for no. The teacher can also set this to be multiple choice. So if it was multiple choice, you would see a little A in this box instead of the check. All these things can be used to provide feedback and interaction in the class. Now the next little bit I'd like to show is the chat window. This is where students can type and interact within the class. So as a student, I can say, type in there, hello, hit enter, and it shows for everyone in the class. Now, please note that the teacher can see all chats. There's a little tab at the bottom, tabbing system at the bottom. Students can actually choose to private message other students. So when they're in here, you can click on them and choose to private message them. It shows as a tab. Only the people who they're messaging can see it. But the teacher can always see all chats, whether they're private or not. So I always like to encourage students to stay on topic during class and not private message each other a lot, because the teacher is trying to manage all these different aspects of a class, the audio, the participants, the chat, and the lesson on the board here. And so seeing a whole bunch of private chats showing up in this chat window can be very distracting for teachers. So just keep that in mind. Now, the last section I would like to highlight for you is this big area that is sort of the main part of the online classroom, which is our whiteboard. Now, right now it's blank, but I'm going to load a screen here so you can see what that looks like. So now you can see that I have inserted a screen on the whiteboard. The teacher will usually run a series of screens and go through them, and as part of the lesson there'll be discussions, there'll be activities, things for the students to do, and the students will actually be able to interact on this whiteboard as well. Now just make note that if you're in a Vclass on a device, an iPad or other tablet where you're using the Collaborate app, you just need to know that the whiteboard tools will not work for you on here. So students will see the stuff on the screen here, but they won't be able to use the tools to interact. They won't be able to draw or type on the screen. So that's just something to keep in mind if they're in on a Vclass. A tablet works, they can see things, but they just can't do the interactive stuff on this screen. They can still use the chat, they can still use the mic. Now, when the teacher activates the tools, you'll see the toolbar here just to the right of the participants window. This toolbar is comprised of a whole bunch of tools that students have probably seen before. They've seen maybe in Paint or in other programs on the computer, they've used them, so they're probably not going to take very long for them to get used to using these tools on the board. So let's just go through some of these tools and show you how they work on the whiteboard. The first one here is a select tool. This is you click on this and you get an arrow and you can select things. I'll show you in a minute how you can actually use that. The next tool here is a pointer tool. So a teacher might ask the student to use a pointer, maybe go through a maze or show something on the screen. So they click on this and they get a choice of pointer tools that they can use. So smiley face, X, etc. I often use the finger pointing tool. And then the next tool that students often will use is the drawing tool. There are actually two drawing pens that you can use. One is sort of I call it the pen. It's the normal opaque sort of pen. When you click on it, you get a color palette that you can use to choose a different color, and you can also choose the stroke width. So you can choose a narrow or wide one. Most students will usually use a thinner one, but you can also choose one that's really wide as well. Now, the nice thing about the other tool on this pen app icon is that you also have a highlighter tool. So you can see when I use the thick dark line, it covers everything up beneath it. So sometimes the teacher might actually request that students use the highlighter, which is this one. It's the pen with the sort of hollow center. When they click on that, you get again the color palette and the stroke width. But you'll see that when you use it, things can be seen underneath it. So that can be really useful when you want people to highlight things, if you're doing a word search or something like that, where you don't want things covered underneath, and then people can still see the words below their highlighter. Now, I'm going to show you also the typing tool. This comes in really handy because drawing words with the pen can be pretty onerous. It takes up a lot of room. Kids might use the big font or the big width and it just eats up space. Whereas if you use the typing tool, you can type more manageably on the screen. So you have two choices here. You can use this one here, which is you click on here and then you click on the screen and you get a big box to type in. Or you can use the one that's just the capital A, which just gives you sort of a little screen to type in. Both of them work. Sometimes the capital A without the lines gives you a little bit of a smaller space to write on. Now the nice thing about when things that you type or images or things that you put on the screen is you can move them. Sometimes I'll ask students to all type something on the screen all at once, and all of a sudden they're all typing sort of in the same space. So you can click on the selector tool, the little arrow at the top here, and you can click on something that you've written or typed and move it. Or even hit the delete button and delete it. So things can be moved around in class, which is kind of nice. The last few tools are just shape tools. You can do a circle or, oh, here we go. You can do circles and squares that have fill or no fill. And then sometimes students might try to screen grab, which is this one, or they might use the clip art, which is here. Clip art one is fun. Sometimes if students don't want to use a pointer, they want to use a clip art image, they might come here and use any of these images in the clip art bank. And then they can put a clip art thing on the screen, they can move it around, things like that. So that takes us to the end of our Vclass tutorial. I've showed you all the main parts of the class and some of their basic functions. There's probably a lot more I could show you, but really anything that you want to do, you can kind of do as you go into class and get used to the environment. Kids will get used to it very easily. They usually are showing me how to do things, so they usually don't have a lot of trouble figuring how things work. Thank you very much for joining us for this tutorial, and please don't hesitate to ask your teacher if you have any questions about things that we've done here. Have a great day, and we hope to see you in Vclass soon. Bye.